Alright, we're going to look at some knives here. As many of my viewers know, I'm a scout leader, and I'm going to talk about selecting a knife for a youth in terms of scouting. So these are all, well, that's a multi-tool. It's there for a reason. These are all jackknives or folding knives. In my troop, I only permit knives that have a lock blade. These all have lock blades, and we have 3 different types of lock blades here to demonstrate. And this is called a fixed blade or a sheath knife. It doesn't fold. In Scouts Canada, when you become a cub, you are allowed to carry a knife. You have to earn your knife permit. You're only allowed to have a folding knife in cubs. And then when you get to be a scout, you're allowed to carry a sheath knife or a fixed blade. Now, arguably, I've talked to some knife experts that are of the opinion that this is actually safer than these, and it's kind of backwards that Scouts Canada only allows you to have the safer knife when you're older, because 9 times out of 10 when you injure yourself, it's when you're folding or unfolding these guys. This is according to some of the experts I've talked to. So let's go through these. This is a Stanley. This is actually a pretty good knife. I got this in a set with the Stanley multi-tool. You want to open that up and demonstrate what type of lock. So the lock on this is called a spine lock. It's on the back there. You're not going to cut yourself in my video, are you?
No.
Okay, so that's actually a pretty good knife. It came with this. I got them on sale at Home Depot in a 2-pack. I think they were $8 for the 2-pack, so I got 3 of them. That's obviously been abused. It's not an especially good multi-tool. Whoops. It's not an especially good multi-tool, but it was definitely worth it just to get the knife for $8. It was just crazy. Alright, set that aside. These two are Leatherman, and there's 2 different versions of the same knife. One has a serrated blade and one has a straight blade, so this is the serrated one, this is a straight one. They sell them both at Mech. They're really good knives, very simple. So what kind of lock is on those? That's the, can't remember what that's called. Open that up and show it again. These are not as good of a, because look, when you're activating that lock mechanism, your thumb is right in the way. Show that again. Your thumb is right in the way of the blade folding up, so that's not an ideal lock mechanism. It's not a spine lock. I can't remember what it's called.
Handle lock?
No. So it's not terrible when you get used to it, but they are both good knives, and there's 2 different versions of it. This is a CRKT, slightly more expensive than the Leathermans, and it also comes in 2 versions. Although it's also got a double lock. Did you see the double lock on it? That thing there, which is kind of neat for the extra price. That's good value, and it's got a spine lock. So demonstrate that lock again. Spine lock is really the safest kind of lock. Show that again slowly. You push the button on the back of the spine. That's really the safest kind of lock for youth. Then you get into, don't start on these yet, Swiss Army knives. Personally, I think just a knife on its own is a better tool for just about anybody. When you get into the Swiss Army knives, they get a little bit gimmicky. 99 times out of 100, you just want the knife, so just buy a knife. These get gimmicky and they become a little bit clumsy to use. These 2 ones in particular are actually, I think one's called the rucksack, and I can't remember what the other one is called. They're the same knife, except they have a different locking mechanism. And they're among the better of the Swiss Army in my view, in that they're safer, they're formed for your hand, they're primarily meant to be used as a knife. Some of the other Swiss Armies, they get really clumsy. So show that one first. Yeah, that one's got a very weird locking mechanism. Open it up first.
My fingernails. Yeah. There we go.
There you go. So do that slowly, operate the thing. So the problem with this is that that lever is right in the way, and look, open it up again and pretend you're using it. So look where you're, now show me, turn around this way. So your finger is right on that release mechanism when you're using the knife in its normal operational mode. That's really dangerous. And these are actually, is this the Scouts branded one? No, there's one identical to this that's branded by Scouts Canada, and it has a dulled tip. But honestly, I don't think that's a very good choice for a youth, because when you're operating it, your finger is right on the trigger that releases that blade. Not a good choice at all. These guys are pretty good. They are some of the few Swiss Army knives that I think are reasonable for a youth to choose. This one is kind of beaten up and it doesn't work very well anymore. It belonged to one of my scouts, and I told him that I'd found it and he never came to claim it. That's the locking mechanism. It's kind of a different locking mechanism. It works well. And it's got, I can't remember what else is on it. Go to this one next. This has the same stuff on it. No, that one's broken. Just move on to the next one. That's the same basic knife, only it's got a different locking mechanism. It's got all the same tools, and you can see that it's been sharpened a few times because I've got a lot of use out of this knife. This is a pretty good knife for if you want a Swiss Army knife that is not clumsy and is formed. You can see that's actually formed to your hand, and it's a pretty good choice. But really, honestly, what youth is going to need a corkscrew for starters? And there's a couple of other things on there that really it's questionable whether you need those. There's a little saw on there which I've used a few times, but really you should have a proper saw. Close that blade first before you get poking it. And it's one of these kind of locks that's in the middle of your again, this type of lock, your finger's right in the way when you're operating the lock, so that's not an ideal choice. Dude, you're making me nervous. Yeah, that one's a little bit tough. And then there is so this is just a sheath knife or a fixed blade. Gerber makes some good knives. I've got actually on my belt right now, I have another Gerber knife. You can open that one up. That's a pretty good knife. It's got the serrated edge on it. The serrated edge is good for cutting twigs or rope or something. It does make it harder to sharpen. So this guy has the two different versions. This guy also has the other version that I had confiscated at the airport a few months ago, unfortunately, because I forgot I had it on my hip. So close that guy up. It's got a spine lock, which is a nice safe locking mechanism. And these guys, fixed blades, especially a good hardy heavy duty one like this, you can split wood with this using maybe I'll just pause here and I'll show you how to split wood with this. It's kind of neat. It's one of the advantages of a fixed blade knife. Hold on. Alright, so splitting wood with a fixed blade knife, basically you put it on the big log that you want to split and you take a smaller piece of wood. He's not really hitting it hard there, that's fine, but if you hammer that really hard, you can drive the knife down there and actually split wood for a fire with a fixed blade knife. If you did that with a jackknife, a folding knife, you'd probably break the knife, so it's really not an ideal thing to do with a folding knife. So okay, take that away. So that's basically a good overview of the knives. As I said, when you're choosing a knife for a youth, really the best thing is just a knife. You don't need all the fancy stuff. I know the youth really like the Swiss Army knives because they look cool and they have all the fancy stuff on them. These are probably the safest ones amongst the Swiss Army because they don't really have a lot of crap that gets in your way of using it as a knife. But some of the ones, they have so much stuff on here and it's not very well shaped, and it makes it 99 times out of 100 you're just using the knife, and all that other stuff on there makes it dangerous when you're trying to use it as a knife. So be careful what you're selecting, but really I just recommend a plain old knife, either a jackknife or for scouts. You can definitely show up at camp with a belt knife, and as long as you have your knife permit or have announced that you're working on your knife permit, that's perfectly fine.